Hello and welcome to another edition of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale History, where today we'll be taking a look at one of the most highly anticipated characters in the game, Solid Snake. At the request of series director Hideo Kojima, Snake represents a series that is hugely popular with PlayStation gamers and... wait, hang on, I did that wrong. Let me start again. Hello and welcome to another edition of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale History, where today we'll be looking at a character whose appearance in the game was somewhat controversial. Today we'll be looking at Raiden from the Metal Gear franchise. Metal Gear is a long-running stealth franchise that has been going even longer than the PlayStation family. Initially released for the MSX home computer, the first Metal Gear put you in the shoes of an agent known as Solid Snake, who had to stealthily infiltrate a facility and take down an operation to build a giant death robot called Metal Gear. The game received acclaim and a sequel, but the franchise didn't really catch wider attention until 1998, when a full 3D sequel, Metal Gear Solid, was released for the PlayStation. Featuring updated gameplay from the old MSX games, this saw Snake battling his way through Shadow Moses Island to take down another giant death robot called Metal Gear Rex. It was a huge critical and commercial success and helped tie the Konami franchise to the PlayStation family. This tie was strengthened with the announcement of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty for the newly announced PlayStation 2. Excitement was high as gamers waited eagerly to play as Snake again, only to find that series director Hideo Kojima had pulled a bait and switch and placed them into the dainty heels of Raiden, a more feminine rookie agent with a girlfriend who rang at inappropriate times, and his greatest achievement was managing to avoid drowning. Good job, Raiden. Fans were not happy. Where was Snake? They all cried. Kinda similar to the reaction when Raiden was announced for PlayStation All-Stars, really, especially considering the fact that Snake appeared in a certain other crossover fighting game, so expectations were pretty high that he would appear here too. But there was method to the madness. You see, when Metal Gear Solid 4 was released, Raiden had undergone a slight character change. And by slight, I mean he'd become a cyborg ninja capable of defeating walking battle tanks by breakdancing. Essentially, he'd become pretty cool, when he wasn't complaining about it raining the day he was born. Suddenly, gamers wanted to play as Raiden and get the chance to get all choppy and slashy with his cool new action hero. Their prayers were answered with the announcement of Metal Gear Rising, a game that throws stealth out of the window and replaces it with the ability to chop cyborgs into tiny pieces. Raiden's PlayStation All-Stars announcement kind of coincided with that game by a few months, so it kinda makes sense. Sure, I know you all want to be playing as Snake, but let's give Raiden the benefit of the doubt and examine his moveset, shall we? While Raiden didn't become a cyborg ninja until Metal Gear Solid 4, it wasn't the first time he used a sword.
Why? Olga asked me to give it to you. Besides, I'm not a big fan of blades.
At the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, after some shenanigans involving bizarre calls from a senile colonel and being naked, Snake handed Raiden a high-frequency blade which could then be used in the battle to escape the base.
Move the right analog stick up and down to make a vertical slice, and left and right to slice parallel to the ground. Move the stick in a circle to do a rotating cut. Push it forward to lunge and strike. You can guard with your blade if you have the L1 button pressed down. You should be able to deflect a bullet or two.
Initially, Raiden was limited to basic sword slashes, but then he gained a more diverse moveset after his head and spine were grafted to a robot body. Naturally, in Metal Gear Rising, Raiden's basic attack is a quick slash combo, which has become a lot flashier by being a cyborg. This is the basic square combo in both Rising and in PlayStation All-Stars, and does a small amount of damage, but it's very fast. Upon becoming a cyborg, Raiden suddenly gained the ability to use his sword with his feet. No, really, it's true, just look at the footage. It's why it looks like he wore heels in pretty much every appearance, that and because Kojima seemed determined to make him as feminine as possible. In Metal Gear Rising, this translated as Raiden's heavy attack, which was a slower but more powerful attack than Raiden's basic slashes. The kick combo was a series of slow slashes leading into a flurry of stabs that could only be performed by someone whose legs are literal pistons. This combo was split into two moves in PlayStation All-Stars, keeping Raiden's heavy attack the same, with the final flurry placed as his side triangle move because I guess they needed to fill the slot with something. But there were more complex moves that could be unlocked throughout Metal Gear Rising, including the defensive offensive, which was a dodge move, although not one that was all that easy to use. By jumping and performing a light attack at the same time, Raiden would perform a dodge move while simultaneously slashing his sword towards whoever he was dodging. Normally this move saw Raiden jumping backwards, but it could be adjusted with the stick to send Raiden left or right instead. If the stick was pushed forward, Raiden would hop towards towards his opponent and slash them. It was less of a dodge and more of a way to lead into a combo. This seems to be the inspiration for Raiden's jumping roll cut in PlayStation All-Stars, since it's another move where Raiden hops forward while slashing. But what of the leaping cut, a move that seems similar in form and function? Well, this appears to be a context-sensitive move in Rising, where Raiden would leap towards an opponent if he was at a distance towards them in order to close the gap. However, this move became largely useless when you unlocked the lightning strike move, where Raiden would dash towards his opponent with his blade, stabbing forwards in the process. This was a faster way to close gaps and was often pretty devastating. Both of these moves are translated faithfully in PlayStation All-Stars, where both of them give Raiden the ability to close gaps and make up for his lack of long-range abilities. Lightning Strike is a particularly mean move since it's just as devastating as its original counterpart. There is another context-sensitive ability I should talk about quickly, which is the back cut, which Raiden would perform when an enemy was behind him. It was just a simple stab behind him and certainly more effective than the back cut he performed in MGS4, where he stabbed through himself. Not sure how well that works out for you, Jack. This is actually a move in PlayStation All-Stars, giving Raiden 2 side square moves depending on which way he's facing and which way the stick or D-pad is being pushed. It's pretty much the same and there's not a lot to talk about with this. Raiden was also capable of chucking opponents up into the air in Metal Gear Rising, and he could do this in a couple of ways. The first and most basic method of this was with the launcher move, where he would swing the back of his blade upwards into the enemy, knocking them upwards from the sheer force of it. But later on you could unlock a move called Rolling Thunder, where Raiden would perform a backflip with his sword and his feet, and anyone caught in this move would also be sent skyward, although really the launcher was a little more useful because it was quicker, but Rolling Thunder was there if you wanted to look flashy. Both of these moves are in PlayStation All-Stars, where they have the same properties. You have the quick launcher move and the slow Rolling Thunder, although of course the Rolling Thunder is notorious for allowing easy access to a level 1 confirm kill here, which makes it the slightly more useful move this time around. In the air, Raiden's other options included a heavy attack where he would spin in the air with his sword extended before slamming down into the ground heavily with the sword in his feet, allowing the sword to fully reach the ground. This move is the inspiration for the Slam Slice in PlayStation All-Stars, although 2 more aerial moves were added that don't appear to be from Rising at all. The Heel Slice seems to have been added to give Raiden a fast slam down move, while the Whirlwind Kick is a spin move in the air added to seemingly just fill out a spot. But another aerial move that was pretty nice was the Falling Lightning move, where Raiden would strap the sword to his feet and then perform a charge move towards an enemy. This was a great move for closing the distance because not only did it have great range, but it also had great attack power. It also had some homing abilities too, which was pretty handy as well. Basically, this move was awesome, so it makes sense that it's also part of Raiden's PlayStation All-Stars moveset too, where it loses its homing ability but stays pretty effective all the same. One unique move for Raiden was the draw attack, where he plugged his sword back into his cyber sheath, allowing him to charge it with energy, which could then be released in a single powerful sword strike. It was naturally extremely slow and very difficult to use in a lot of situations, but it did have its uses. The draw attack appears in PlayStation All-Stars, where it can't be charged to the same degree as its original form, but it does give Raiden some minor teleportation abilities since it can move him closer to his opponent if you're within a certain range. A similar move, only without the charge, was the Sweep Kick, where Raiden would swing the sword with his feet, tripping enemies in the vicinity. This is also a move for Raiden in PlayStation All-Stars, where it remains slightly less slow than the draw attack.
Combat is not all offense, however. You also need to protect yourself. First, follow the direction of the enemy's attack. Parry those attacks by executing light attacks of your own in the same direction. This is how you parry. It is the keystone of your defense.
One useful ability throughout Metal Gear Rising was the ability to parry. By pressing the light attack button at the right time in the direction of an attacking enemy, Raiden could block their attack with his sword, knocking them back and allowing him to swing his sword to gain the upper hand. It was a tricky ability to master, but once you did master it, it allowed you to take charge of pretty much every fight in the game. So naturally Raiden keeps this parry ability in PlayStation All-Stars, although it's less tricky to operate since now you simply press circle. It has basically the same effect beyond that though. In keeping with traditional Metal Gear routes, it was possible to perform stealth kills in Metal Gear Rising. While normally this would involve stabbing an enemy in the back while they're unaware, there was also an aerial stealth kill. In this move, Raiden would jump down onto an unaware enemy, his sword pointing downwards, impaling them where he landed. This move has been incorporated into PlayStation All-Stars, giving Raiden a slow downward spike move called Drill. Unlike its original form, this is no longer context sensitive and can be performed at any time. But there are 2 moves involving Raiden landing on opponents that weren't in Rising. However, when Raiden was introduced as a cyborg ninja in Metal Gear Solid 4, they showed off his agility by having him jump across a series of small walking battle tanks known as geckos, stabbing knives on his feet into them as he landed. This appears to be the inspiration for Raiden's horse jump in PlayStation All-Stars, which sees him perform a short hop that causes damage if he lands on an opponent. Also from MGS4, Raiden went up against a supposedly invincible bad guy named Vamp, and one move he performed against him was a Stomp move where he stood on Vamp's chest and stabbed knives into him using his feet. This may be the possible inspiration for Raiden's Stomp move in PlayStation All-Stars as well, since the animation does seem to be very similar. And now, a quick rundown of all of those moves.
Level 1!
Back when Raiden first appeared as a cyborg in MGS4, one move that made people consider him to be a badass at that point was a scene where he shoved his sword in his feet and performed a spinning breakdance move to take down a large group of geckos that had him surrounded. The breakdance move essentially turned Raiden into a deadly whirlwind. This move became a playable move in Rising too. By spinning the stick and pressing the heavy attack button, Raiden would perform a spinning breakdance move that caused damage all around him, and it was pretty awesome. Although a normal move in Rising, its power and range of effect resulted in it becoming a super in PlayStation All-Stars, where Raiden will spin around on his hands with his sword and his feet. It's one of the most effective supers in the game.
Level 2!
Throughout Metal Gear Rising, Raiden could make use of an ability called Blade Mode, which allowed him to slow down time and make extremely precise cuts in his enemies. In Blade Mode, the control you had over Raiden's sword increased. While you could still slash with the normal buttons, this mode also allowed you to use the right stick to completely control the angle of Raiden's cuts. This was used mostly to slice enemies across their weak points, which would expose their cybernetic spines, allowing Raiden to remove them and take their energy. Blade Mode was most effective when an enemy was stunned or had taken a lot of damage, and typically wouldn't work all that well on enemies that weren't weakened. It also operated using an energy bar, which would deplete whenever you went into Blade Mode, and until the meter was filled again, you wouldn't get the fancy slowdown effects that made Blade Mode so effective. Because this was a move typically used after weakening enemies, it makes sense that it became a super for Raiden in PlayStation All-Stars. The slowdown effect has been replicated by allowing the super to have a stun effect on nearby opponents, and another neat little feature of it is that you can use the right stick to cut while in the super, just like in Rising. Raiden's spine-ripping move that stems from Blade Mode is also one of his throws in PlayStation All-Stars, where Raiden will slam an opponent down and then rip out a spine of AP, which sounds gruesome, but it isn't.
Level 3!
Despite Rising's hack and slash gameplay, Metal Gear is primarily a stealth series. The main series often saw you employing a variety of techniques to avoid being seen, whether it was taking out guards with tranquilizers or special hand-to-hand techniques, crawling through vents and other side passages, or simply pretending to be a humble box. Yes, cardboard boxes could be employed throughout the games. By crouching inside one of these, Snake or Raiden would become virtually invisible as long as they stayed still. They quickly became an iconic aspect to the series, with the games even acknowledging that it was a bit silly at times. The box even found its way into Rising, where it can still be used for stealth purposes. In some areas, the box could be used to sneak upon unaware enemies for a surprise attack. Even the enemies of Rising knew the value of boxes, since you could find them hidden in various points of the game, and Raiden could slash them open and take out these cowardly foes. This is the basis for Raiden's Level 3 in PlayStation All-Stars, where all of his opponents will hide in various boxes around the stage and try to hide from him. Slashing open the boxes will reveal opponents or watermelons. If you find an opponent, they get stunned in a similar manner to Blade Mode, and the right stick works as an attack here too. Wait, did I say watermelons? That's right, watermelons. Back when Metal Gear Rising was announced, they demonstrated the Blade Mode mechanics using various different sliceable objects, including watermelons, showing Raiden as some kind of crazy ninja chef. But watermelons made various cameo appearances in the final game, although they weren't nearly as common as the tech demos initially suggested. Instead, they became little Easter eggs, and yes, you could very much slice them up.
playtime is over.
And that's Raiden. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I imagine I'll be back soon with the next edition. Stay tuned.